It makes me sick. When I go to the store, see something that's made with cotton from China, it makes me wonder if my sister has worked on that while she's being held unjustly in prison.
Hundreds of thousands of people from ethnic minorities, including the Uyghur community, are being forced by the Chinese authorities to pick cotton.
Thousands allegedly work in tomato fields and in factories against their will.
Chinese government arrested me in August 2005 and put me in jail for 2 years. 1 year in custody house, 1 year in labor camp in Shihu, Laojiaosuo, in the north of the Uyghur homeland. Some of us at the time passed away while they are working. I remember at least 2 people died in a hot summer.
Xinjiang produces over 20% of the world's cotton, about 35% of the world's polysilicon, about 15% of its tomato paste, and around 2/3 of its pigment from pepper used for cosmetics.
When I see a government that is repeatedly violating the human rights of another person, I think, goodness, this should have been relegated to the history books.
In 2017, with the mass detention of the Uyghur people, by summer, we knew there were about 1 to 3 million people were in detention. And with that, we lost 24 of my husband's family.
Beijing's system of forced labor in Xinjiang is twofold. Uyghurs have been detained in camps, and then from the camps they've been shifted to forced labor in securitized factories. Non-detained Uyghurs have also been scooped up by village work teams and police guards. They have been coercively put into training, and then they're transferred in a system called labor transfer to work in Chinese factories. My name is Adrian Zenz. I'm Director in China Studies at the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. The Xinjiang police files is a large cache of tens of thousands of files hacked from internal police computers, even computers with data of re-education camp management, internal speeches by Chen Quanguo and other party secretaries and leaders explaining high-level policies. And this internal cache of files was given to the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation in 2022. I uncovered that forced labor and poverty alleviation works by government work teams going door to door and assessing Uyghur families' employment status, income status, and many of them were then selected to be forcibly trained and transferred, accompanied by officials and police guards, to factories in factory parks, industrial parks, operated by Han Chinese, and at times to other provinces where they had to work several thousand miles away in textile factories.
Forced labor is not just something that is carried out by transnational criminal organizations. It's also something that's state-sponsored. In both the context of China and North Korea that I work on, you just see regimes, governments saying, we are going to exploit our people, we are going to force them to work.
What's happening in those camps and the prisons is horrific. The Uyghurs, they are subject to forsake their ethnic identity, forsake their language, forsake their religion, and they are subject to torture, humiliation, indoctrination, mental, physical, and sexual torture. And they are completely isolated from their families. Nobody can communicate with them or go visit them.
They forcibly separate Uyghur families. Children are put in boarding schools. Parents work in factories. This work is often involuntary, and it comes with the threat of a penalty if you don't do it. Therefore, by the standards of the International Labour Organization, this is forced labor. The Uyghurs are a Turkic Central Asian people group that lives in what China has now called the so-called Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Uyghurs refer to it as East Turkestan, or the Uyghur homeland, which is in northwestern China, bordering Kazakhstan, culturally very related to Turkey, Uzbekistan, countries like that. They are a Muslim people predominantly, and therefore they are very distinct from the Han Chinese.
Innocent grandmas, grandpas, uncles and aunts, and the young people, young teenagers, they're all being charged. Their only crime is being Uyghur. My name is Rushan Abbas. I am an Uyghur American. I am the founder and executive director of Campaign for Uyghurs. I participated in one of the panels about the detention and the China's policies and atrocities against Uyghurs. And that was September 5th, 2018, when I spoke at Hudson Institute. And that was my first public speech. It was televised on YouTube. That changed my entire life. 6 days after that speech, the Chinese government took my sister and my maternal aunt, which are the only two living relatives I have left back home.
My name is Tahir Imen. I am Uyghur. I was born in Kashgar, Uyghur homeland. Now I live in Washington, D.C., and I'm Uyghur human rights activist and Uyghur linguist. So some of my friends who know inside information told me that it would be good and beneficial for Uyghur business owners, intellectuals, or any religious leaders to leave the China as soon as possible. This was in November 2016. I took that really seriously. I worked really hard to get out of China. At the time, I tried really hard to get my wife and my daughter with me to Israel. But I failed because my wife was a professor at the university. So as a government official, she wasn't allowed to have a passport. I was told that my wife was arrested and interrogated for a few days. March 2018, my daughter told me that the Chinese government is taking care of them and I am harming them and I cannot contact them anymore. And she said, "You are a bad person and the government is our protector." Me and my daughter, we are very close. I love her so much, and I know she loves me so much. She would never say that if she wasn't forced to say that. My daughter was 7 years old in 2018. Now she is almost 14 years old. I know very little about her. I don't know how is she doing. I don't know how does she look like.
Uyghurs are subject to forced labor. They're kind of the starting point for, let's say, cotton or tomatoes or polysilicon, all of which are industries that we know are tainted by Uyghur forced labor.
Major American corporations continue to be directly or indirectly complicit with forced labor in the Uyghur region. And there's a definitive risk that these products can end up on our own supermarket shelves.
Big brands like Del Monte, Nestle, and Unilever are purchasing Xinjiang tomatoes for their international factories.
In our latest investigation, we are uncovering connections between Western companies such as Del Monte, Kraft Heinz, Unilever, Nestle, and so on, with tomato products, with pepper products from Xinjiang. Sometimes this is indirectly through subsidiaries. We've uncovered that Kraft Heinz continues using tomato paste from Xinjiang companies and working directly together with them. We have also found that Del Monte is using tomato products from COFCO, a state-owned corporation in Xinjiang, and they replied to us saying that basically, yes, we are using COFCO tomato paste, but COFCO is providing audits. It's like the fox certifying itself that it hasn't been eating the hens in the hen house.
Consumers, mostly unwittingly, end up aiding and abetting in these state-sponsored enslavement of people.
American consumers need to really increase their awareness of how some of these major corporations are directly or indirectly complicit in rights abuses in the region, and how some of these products can end up in our own supermarket shelves and therefore in our own homes.
Holding China accountable is so incredibly important. The Chinese Communist Party is incredibly brazen in its efforts to violate the human rights.
We see a strong push from the United States to hold China accountable. And also we are seeing some movements in Europe and Canada and the UK and the other countries around the world. But is it enough? No.
The United States has determined that what's happening in the Uyghur region is a genocide. And therefore, it needs to do something about it. It needs to take concrete measures. It needs to have a plan. No such plan has been published. The European Union has been very weak about the whole situation. It has not issued strong statements. It has now adopted a forced labor ban, which is not going into effect till in 3 years. In the meantime, steps need to be taken. The European Union and Western countries and the United States need to act more in unison to counter Beijing's crimes in the region. But the greatest lack of action is with the Muslim world and the global South, many of which are parroting Beijing's propaganda and are not doing anything to help their Muslim brothers in the Uyghur homeland.
In my personal opinion, the amount of goods that have been stopped by Customs and Border Protection, the primary implementing agency, have fallen far below what we would want to see.
The pressure on Uyghur forced labor is not enough.
Where's the Hollywood celebrities? Where's Disney, NBA? When I look at them and they are staying silent, to me, you are not just giving up your freedom of speech, you are giving up your principles. Genocide and the slavery, they are not something the world should stay neutral. There's only one side that's being on the right side of the history. If we don't speak out today, then the only voice left to speak will be one of regret.